Good morning. My name is Ravi. I'm one of the sitting selectmen in the wonderful town of Seabrook, New Hampshire. And thanks to all of you for voting me to become a selectman. And I appreciate the confidence that you have shown in me. When I ran for selectman, I promised all of you that I will do my very best to control the steep increases that we have experienced in this town. And I believe I have done the best I could in the first 8 months. But I have learned a lot of things along the way, and I figured that I will share them with you so that you will be well informed as we enter the election season for this year. My idea is simply to share my knowledge with you so you can vote the way you want in the March town elections. I believe that a well informed electorate is the foundation for having a very sound and healthy town. Um, but that will happen when you take the information that I provide for you and engage in the civic processes and exercise citizen activism. So with that said, let's get into the presentation. I want to start off with a refresher. I presented this slide in my presentation last year, and this shows how the town budget, total budget is. The town or the municipality portion, which pays for the employees' salaries, benefits, and for all the capital improvements in the town, is about 46% of the total taxes that the town collects. 48% of the taxes they collect, they go to fund the school system. In Seabrook, we have an elementary school and a middle school, but we send our kids to Winnacunnet Regional High School, which is shared by other local communities as well, like Northampton, Hampton. So we pay a share of the Winnacunnet school expenses based on several parameters, including the number of kids we send and the demographics of our town. But the point of this slide is that the amount of money that we spend in terms of taxes is split into three pieces: the town budget, the school budget, and the county tax that we end up paying. And the important thing is that the town budget is actually smaller than the school budget. And so if we have to have a larger impact on our tax bottom line, we need to really get involved in the way the school system is operated. School system is run by the board of the school board as much as the town is run by the board of selectmen, and board of selectmen really don't have any jurisdiction over the school budget. So if you want to make a larger impact on our tax basis, you need to get involved in the way the schools are run. In this presentation, we'll be talking only about the town budget, including the capital improvement plan. We will be only talking about that portion. Many times when I ask people, hey, what drives up your property taxes? What is the primary cause of it? People give in this town three reasons. One is because my house appreciated. Secondly, because we are a host town to a power plant, and the power plant is the biggest taxpayer in the town. When they pay more or less than the year before, it has an impact on the way that our taxes go. So some people think that is the primary reason, and others think that the total budget of the town and school combined, when it increases, our property taxes would also increase. All of these things have some amount of truth, but when the question is what increases what increases my property taxes as a primary reason, it is not my house appreciating or the power plant not paying enough money. It is really the total budget increasing. The home appreciation is a factor, but it's not a primary factor. Neither is the contribution of the power plant. Um, what often happens is that um, since we have residential, commercial, industrial property and utilities in this town, these are all different property classes. Depending upon the way the economy is, sometimes one property class may appreciate or depreciate relative to the last year, and that would change the mix of the tax base in terms of the property classes. So one property class may see an increase in their tax contribution, whereas another one may see a decrease. That's sort of what happened last year when the residential property class appreciated quite a bit more than the commercial. Much of the tax burden shifted over to the residential property class, and we all got a very big tax bill in the December of 2021. Now, so the um, uh, changes in the way that different property classes appreciate or depreciate affect our taxes, but not primarily, but it's a secondary factor. Also, when you go into the March elections and vote in for many new one-time or recurring spending, it affects the taxes that the town has to raise to pay for all those appropriations. That will also affect our taxes, but that kind of will be reflected through the overall increase in the total taxes of the town. So when you ask somebody, hey, why is my tax going up? And if they give you, it's because your property appreciated. That's a very simple answer. It is also not the most honest answer. The answer is really because the town is spending more money, and the money has to be raised through the tax base, and it gets divvied up across the entire tax base, and you are seeing the increase in your property taxes because now you have to pay a little bit more to meet the monies that the town needs to raise to meet its increased budget. So, important takeaway I want to leave you with here is that the total town taxes is really built upon the taxes they collect from all of its residences, commercials, utilities, and industrial base. And so your property tax is merely your share of the town's budget. So if the town's budget goes up, then you can expect that your share is going to go up. Um, if the town budget does not go up and if nobody's property appreciated, then there will be no increase in taxes. But if the town budget remained the same, but and everybody's properties appreciated equal amount, once again you won't see any increase in the taxes because your share will remain the same in proportion to the rest of the tax base in the town. But it's only when that a town uh, spending goes up and that there are variations in the appreciation and depreciation of the property classes, you will see variation in your taxes year over year, and so you got to keep that in mind. So the best way to control your property taxes is to control the total spending by the town, and we selectmen can control what we do with that 46% of the overall total bill, which the town spends, but 48% of it is the money that we appropriate to the school, and so we only control a smaller portion of it. So I want you to keep it in mind. Now, I want to walk you through our tax bill because there is a lot of information in here. It is worth taking a look at. See, here is the tax bill that I received from town of Seabrook in December of 2022. It identifies it came from the town of Seabrook, and that is my final tax bill for 2022. It says final tax bill because we receive tax bills twice a year, in June and in December. And this is a December tax bill, so this is my final tax bill. And it is for tax year 2022 for the property ID and the map and parcel. There, if you go to the county records, my property will be identified in terms of map and parcel numbers also in legal papers, that's how they identify the property, not by the street address. And it came from, the tax bill came from the tax collector, Michelle Knowles, in our town, and her phone number is here. And it is to Michelle that I'll be sending back the my check. And it clearly came to my wife and I, to our home address. Now, the taxes are based on the assessed valuation. In my case, the land value is $556,900. My building value is $290,500 for a total valuation of $847,400. And my land area is 0.06 acres. Lots in the beach are typically 50 by 100. That's 5,000 square feet, or 1/8 of an acre, or 0.125 acres. I live in a condex, which is one building in one lot that's split in the middle, and I live in one half of it. So it's a one half of 0.125, that is 0.0675, and so the area is shown as 0.06. That's where that number comes from. So all this information is in here. There are other lines like current use and other valuation. These things don't typically apply to us. These are for farmlands and so forth. And I can explain them to you if you are interested in. Give me a call and we can talk about those. Now, the tax calculations are shown in this block. The gross value is $847,400, as you saw over here, and there is an exemption line which is empty for me. But in this town, if you are elderly, if you are disabled, blind, or something, you could apply for an exemption, and if your exemption is approved, typically, we do some checks, and if you pass certain criteria, then you will be given an exemption. In that case, a certain amount of the property value will be knocked out of the assessment. So your net value will be smaller than your gross value. But in my case, since there are no exemption, my net value is the same as the gross value of $847,400. And the tax for this net value is $11,228, and I'll explain to you how this number came from the $847,400. If I were a veteran, I may have applied for a veteran credit, and the credit will be taken right off of the tax calculated. And in June, I received a tax bill of $5817, and it was based on my previous tax rate that was in effect. And so I paid $5817 last year, and not last year, last year in June of 2022. And so my December bill happens to be the difference between the $11,228 and the amount of money that I already paid. I didn't make any prepayments. So my tax bill happens to be $5411 in December, which I paid before the due date of January the 6th or something like that. Anyway, here is the town tax rate. The town tax rate is $6.31 for $1,000 of the assessed value. And that means that is the money that goes to run the town, the municipality, including all the capital budgets and so forth. The local school for the elementary and the middle school in Seabrook, $5.13 of my money goes per thousand for valuation. For Winnacunnet School, my share is $1.13 per thousand. The county tax is $0.68 per thousand of valuation. Beach precinct tax rate, we don't have any. We used to in the past many years ago, but now we don't. And the total tax rate is $13.25. For those of you who have been keeping track of it, and I hope that you are keeping track of it, this total tax rate in last year about this time, it was at $13.73, and that was the value that was used to calculate the tax bill that I received back in June of 2022. And so the $13.25, which was used to calculate my taxes this time in December of 2022, will also be used to calculate the tax payments for the June taxes for 2023. And then a new tax rate will be set in the fall of 2023. And your December bill of 2023 will reflect the new tax rate. So that's how the cycle works. Now, I want to pay attention to this and show you how the taxes are calculated. The total tax is equal to the net value that you see over here multiplied by the total tax rate. And so you divide that by 1,000, and that gives you the number because the tax rate is the dollars per 1,000 of my valuation. So if you just plug in the numbers, you will get the tax calculation right off the bat. It's straightforward math, really no complications in here. There's no trickery in here. It's all straightforward. Now, remember that my total taxes are 11,228 and my valuation is 847,400. With that in mind, let's just take a look at one portion of the tax bill and amplify the town taxes. This tax portion, there is $6.31 per 1,000 of my valuation. So if I take my valuation of 847,400, this 631 translates to $5,349.63. For this year, my school tax, meaning the middle school and the elementary school, I pay $43.49.70, and for the Winnicott school, I pay $956.56. The county tax is $573.69. For Beach Precinct, I pay nothing. So if you add them all up, that gives me the total taxes for the year. That is $11,228, which is also the same number if you multiply 1325 by 847,400 and divided by 1,000, like we saw in the previous slide. So you can take your tax bill and you can break it down like this yourself, and you can see how these numbers work out, and you can then think about, hey, for all the services that I receive from the town is $5,349.63 in my case. Is it reasonable? I say, yeah, it's not bad. So you may want to run these numbers yourselves and you kind of see how it is. But I want to leave you with the following thought, that the town budget is only 46% of the total budget. Granted that this percentage is based on the 2022 budget, when we have the Winnicott school budget in, which is not in yet for 2023, we'll be able to draw the pie chart based on the 2023 numbers. And these numbers may be slightly up or down, but the trend is generally true. Higher percentage of the total taxes go to the schools. And, here we are looking deeper into the budget of the town. Similar deep dive may be required to look at into the school budget in order to better understand how the monies are spent. Now, I want to talk to you about the spending. Now that we talked about the taxes and how the money is raised, I want to talk about how the spending goes. There are two primary ways in which the town spends the money. One is on its employees' salaries and benefits. Another one is capital spending. In our town, we have many capital assets, the trucks and the cars and fire trucks and buildings and machines. So there are a lot of capital assets we have, even though the important assets that we have in the town are our employees. We do have physical assets which need to be maintained. Sometimes we need to add, we need to remove things from service. So there's a lot that goes into it. All of them take money. So the town spending is broken into these two big categories of employee salaries and benefits and capital spending. The employee salaries and benefits are predominantly in the town budget that you see levied, and you will see that on the ballot. Now, the capital spendings are, by and large, are reflected through the warrant articles on the ballot, and you will have to vote on these items by items. Many times you go there are 40 items, 50 items, 60 items in there. And these are all warrant articles asking you for additional appropriations to spend predominantly for capital spending. And it is fairly important that you look at them, because these warrant articles originated from the different department heads who are running the different departments, and they are looking at their physical equipment, and they are making a call on what is going to be needed in order to maintain the level of service that they provide to the town. So the warrant articles are based on that. So if you vote them all down, then the capital assets in the town would suffer, and some will kind of show as reduced amount of services that you may receive going forward, and some may end up in resulting in a big spending down the road for which we'll have to bite the bullet and pay then anyway. So you need to understand what these things are and vote appropriately. In terms of salaries and benefits, I want to first take you through the different departments in the town. When I was a citizen of the town, and meaning not in the town management, I didn't really quite appreciate how big and how extensive the town is. There are 28 departments listed in here, and there are people in every one of them, and I didn't always, or I don't even now, as a citizen of this town, necessarily directly interact with all the different departments in here. Well, I do interact with the police department because I directly see the benefits of them doing law enforcement in this town. The fire department, which also doubles as the paramedics department, I hear every so often from people that how they had a situation, they had to call in the paramedics, and they came and did a wonderful job. Everybody loves our paramedics department uniformly, and we are so thankful that they are there. We are so happy when the snow is removed, irrespective of how much we get, and the town's roads are kept clean. The highway department takes care of it. Thank you very much. That's part of DPW. The water department, they took care of us even on a terrible drought of last summer when we hardly had any rain. Many towns had water ban. In our town, we only had voluntary water ban. Our water department took care of generating enough of water and cleaning them and making it portable and supplying it. And we never really had issue. And that's because our water department does such a wonderful job, even though we depend on groundwater as the water source. Rubbish department, they do a wonderful job removing the trash. Rain or shine, they do that, and without that, I know this town will not be a very good town to live in. So thank you very much to DPW, the rubbish department, for doing this job. The sewer department, we have a very large aseptic treatment plant, and that does a wonderful job. I had a tour of it, and my God, I was so impressed by how much that goes into operating the plant, and how nice it is to have a facility like that in a town like ours. The town manager, he's the boss of all the departments. They report to the town manager, and he also directly manages finances, treasury, and assessing department, the town tax collection, and so forth. So all of these things are taken care of by the town manager. He is the chief operating officer of the town. Library, a lot of us are members of the town library, and we love it. It's a wonderful facility. Town clerk, hey, we got to go get our cars registered or get our fishing license. So you can't help but to have to go to the town hall and to talk to the wonderful people who man the town clerk's office, and talk to Cheryl Bowen, who's our town clerk, and talk to wonderful people who work in the department. The parks department maintains the various public spaces and the ballparks and so forth. The recreation department, the building, the rec building that we go to vote, the recreation department does a wonderful job. Many programs they run, after school programs, and school vacation programs, many youth programs, summer programs, and many things they do to really cater to the needs of the town, especially in terms of taking care of our children and the youth. And that's very important because we want to harness the energies of the youth in the right direction, so that they become productive members of the society rather than become a burden. So what they do is really wonderful function in the town. Cemetery is another department part of DPW, does a wonderful job. I'm on the board of selectmen with two other members. There is building inspection department. There is a different inspector for the beach precinct and the town, but together they make sure that all the buildings are kept to the code and they are safe and so forth. And you can go through and read through everything else. I would want to say something about the emergency management. We in Seabrook, we are a host community to a nuclear power plant, and we are also a coastal community. So we could see two modes of emergency here easily, a nuclear disaster or a coastal flooding situation. And if we do not have emergency management, which is really thinking about how to coordinate the resources in the town to be able to help the people survive any disasters, I will be in trouble if they don't do that. So I'm really glad that there is emergency management. So there are a lot of things in here. The different departments, even if we don't directly interact with them, just know that they are there and they play a role in making this the good habitable town that it is. But behind every one of this town sits our employees, and as you would imagine, most of the town employees are on the uh, uh, first responder side, the police and fire, followed by our Department of Public Works and our water and sewer departments. So that's where majority of the employees of the town are concentrated. We have nearly 40 employees in the police department, 28 in the fire department, and you can see other numbers in here. And a lot of the departments have just, merely one or two people, and so total of about 180 or so employees in the town. And I think that they all do a wonderful job, and we are very thankful that they do, and that makes this a wonderful town and a very comfortable town for us to live in. So thank you very much. Now, these employees are not doing charity work. They are employees. They need to be paid, and so the departments have department budget. And once again, the departments that require the most money to operate are the first responders, followed by the DPW and the water and sewer department. And here you can see, even though there are 40 members in the police department and 28 in the fire department, the amount of money that is required to operate these two departments are about the same, about $6.5 million. And then there's a huge drop off down to less than $1.5 million, or many of the other departments that exceed $1 million, the highway department, rubbish department, the water, sewer, and so forth. But the rest of them are less than $1 million, with many other, most of the departments with less than $500,000 a year in annual budget. So if you were to aggregate them and look at them into these five pieces, the fire and police department, they each use up 29%. They represent 29% of the total tax burden on us. Okay, I'm looking at it in terms of tax burden because I'm looking at it in terms of how much it costs us, the taxpayers, to have these services. 12% of our tax burden is from the Department of Public Works. Water and sewer is 11%, and the all of the departments put together is 19%. So what I did was that I wanted to take the money that I sent to the town in the form of my property taxes to operate the town, which is $53.49. Remember a few slides ago I showed you, if you took my over $11,000 of total property taxes and broke it down in terms of town and school and county, the town portion of it was $5,349.63. And if you were to take that and break it down in terms of the different major areas through which I receive surveys, for the fire department and police department, I pay nearly a little over $1,500 a year. About $650 or so for the DPW, about $600 for the water and sewer, about $1,000 for everything else. To me, these look like very reasonable numbers. I have house insurance, which is over $2,500 a year, and I'm paying $1,500 for the fire, and which is sort of an insurance for me. And I look at that and say, that is for the fire and paramedics department. it's not so bad. And is it too much to pay about $1,500 a year to live in a safe community? I don't think so. So by taking my tax number and reflecting it in here, it kind of gives me an ability to check, kind of personalize these numbers and see if they make sense. You may take your number and put it down and break it down like this, and you may be able to go through that exercise yourself and personalize these numbers to yourself. The employees who work for the town, of course, they do get paid. They have salaries and they have benefits. And I'm listing here a number of different benefits that they receive. You can read through them. Not all employees receive all these benefits. Our employees are represented by 4 different unions, and these different each union has its own contract with the town, and they each represents a portion of the town employees. And depending upon the terms of those contracts, some of these benefits may be applicable to the members of their union. Some of them, because the unions represent different job functions, the needs of the employees of the unions are different, and so the type of benefits that they look for are also different. So this is a collection of all the different benefits, but different employees enjoy different benefits. I would say this though, that we do treat our employees very well, and nothing wrong with that. We must treat our employees very well because we get good services. It's a reasonable deal. When you look across the entire town, across the whole employment base, and if you look at the pay and benefits, the benefits are about 52% and pay is about 48%. The benefit number here is slightly skewed by the fact that I have included the overtime as benefit, and not all departments pay overtime. Some departments have the ability to pay their employees overtime, but not all of them. So I put this slide together to talk about the overtime spending by different departments. As the Budget Committee Chair pointed out during my presentation, overtime in public sector should not be looked at the same way as overtime in the private sector. In overtime in the public sector is predominantly because the departments are sized for a normal workload, and sometimes additional work is required. Many things happen, whether it is an emergency with the water department or fire department or some public safety related thing that the police department has to take care of. So different things happen, and in those instances we need to have people come in and do more than their normal call of duty, and for that we need to compensate them justly, and that's how the overtime spending occurs in public sector. So in our town, the town manager has some overtime, especially in the budget preparation time. There's a lot of work involved. The cemetery, parks, recreation, town hall, they all have a little bit of overtime spending. Town hall handles the elections, so depending upon the situation, there may be some reasons why they need to have additional manpower. Sewer department, water department, we can't predict the storm situations and stuff like that. Sometimes unforeseen things happen. Same way with the highway and the rubbish department also may have overtime expenses. The public safety is by far where we have the most overtime spending. The police department has some overtime spending, and so does the fire department. In the earlier version, I showed a bigger number for the fire department, but based on some feedback and pushback from the fire chief, I have changed this number. You can look at these numbers many different ways, that these numbers are very high, but another way to look at it might be to say that at least we have the trained people available to be able to help us through the times when spikes occur and needs come in. But there may also be opportunity to improve efficiency to control the overtime expenses. But these are things that we need to look at it in terms of town management. But how you look at this overtime number is really personal to you, and I'm not going to influence you in any way except to just to share the information as accurately as I have available to me. Another important question that comes to me often is what are the most expensive job functions that we have in the town? And yeah, I look at this information more along the lines of tax burden, not what anybody has in their paycheck, but in terms of what a job function costs to the taxpayers as a sum total of all the pay, benefit, and the whole thing. And that's important because when we add job functions to the town, to the payroll, then this kind of a chart will give you an idea of what are the type of numbers that we are looking at, in terms of tax burden by adding a certain job function. That's how I use it. So I wanted to share this information with you as well. In our town, the tax burden by job function kind of follows this chart. This is uh, the numbers. These are graphics in here, so don't treat them like you are treating a bar chart looking for exact numbers, but they are like, look at them for order of magnitude. We have fire chief at the top, followed by town manager, police chief, fire captain, deputy fire chief, deputy police chief, police sergeant, and firemen, police lieutenant, and policemen are kind of the top 10 in terms of job function. And it is no surprise that the town management and the public safety occupy the top level. And another way to say it is that in this town we pay our the most for our public safety, which I don't think will be unusual compared to the other communities that if you look around. So uh, that's where I want to leave it. Now, let's take a look at the capital spending because we have taken a look at the employees and the employee pay and benefits. The capital improvements, as I told you earlier, are by and large reflected as warrant articles in the ballot. And in the 2023 ballot, you are going to see something like 45 or so warrant articles, and I've captured some of them in here that pertain to capital improvement. And when you come to the deliberative session on the 7th of February, every one of these warrant articles will be read out loud, and each department head who originated the warrant article will come and explain why they are asking this money, what are they planning to do with this money, and that is a very good session to come to. So even though the session will be scheduled for the evening, in some towns, deliberative sessions are scheduled for the whole day because in actuality, if people ask the department heads questions about every warrant article to really get all the information they need to be able to vote fairly on these warrant articles, it could take quite a bit of time. A 45 warrant article, if you allocate, say, 10 minutes, 15 minutes per warrant article, even say 10 minutes, that's 450 minutes without a break. And that is what, almost 6 hours. But the deliberative session is not going to be scheduled for 6 hours. So, they would want to go faster. But you have the right to ask as many questions as you want. And if things don't get done in one day, we'll have to come back and do it another day. But you just have to make sure that you ask all the questions. So when you come to the deliberative session, if you have not had a chance to ask and get answers to questions about every warrant article ahead of time, write them down. So when you come to the deliberative session, ask the questions. Be convinced that the warrant articles, you understand what they are for, you understand that the amount that they are asking for is reasonable, and the timing of the spending that they are asking for is also reasonable. Let me give you an example here. Two items here. There is this well maintenance. In this town, the water comes from the ground, from the wells. And these wells are pumping water constantly, and the water carries with it silt, and that may clog up the screens in the pumps that are several hundred feet underground. And um, and so these screens need to be cleaned, and the well must be maintained so that the flow of water will get to the pump so it can pump it out. If you don't do that, over time, the amount of water that you are able to draw from a well will become less and less and less and less and less. And then and it may end up overheating the pump and breaking the pump, and then we'll have to pull up the whole thing and replace it. That will cost a lot of money. On the other hand, we could spend some money in maintaining these wells, and so you spend a little bit of money right now each year to maintain these wells, so we get good water supply, and we are also preempting large spikes in spendings down the road. So this article makes a lot of sense. This is an annual spending. If you go back to previous year's warrant articles, you will see this thing. So when monies are appropriated through this warrant article, our wells are going to be maintained, and our water sources are going to be preserved. That's important. Now, the next item is new. It's new wells. The town is always in search of finding new water sources because sometimes wells dry up, and you need to have, if you had more sources of water than what we need, then when any of them go down, whether due to mechanical breakdown or the well drying up, we will still have a good amount of water to operate the town. So the town, buys land so that we can explore for water. It turned out the town bought a piece of property, and two test wells were drilled, and luckily we found good water in both of those wells, and we need to now develop them and put the pumps and so forth and connect them via piping to the water collection system, so that we'll have diversity of water sources. Now that requires money, and that is in here. So almost definitely you will hear the water department superintendent Curtis Slayton come and explain this at the deliberative session. But it is this level of detail that you need to understand what this warrant article is all about. And you could ask the question, should we spend $400,000 this year? Would it be too bad if we waited till next year to spend this money instead of now? Why couldn't we do the new wells next year? Right now, we have enough wells producing water. Can we do it next year? Maybe. I think that, but that will be a good question to ask. But the reality is, the sooner we develop and keep them, the greater the time that we have with the diversity of water sources. So if something were to happen in 2023, having additional wells will protect us against it. So these are the types of things you need to understand and decide whether you want to appropriate this kind of money to the town. So taking an approach of voting all of them up or all of them down just based on the way you feel about the property taxes is not always a good approach. You need to really be a little bit more nuanced about this warrant articles. And if you have any questions, write them down, do the research, and if you still have remaining questions, come to the deliberative session, find the answers. Call me. I'll be happy to answer your questions. I answer a lot of questions about these types of things. You can call other selectmen, whoever you feel comfortable with. All different resources are available for you to get satisfactory answer to these questions. Now let me continue. There are more warrant articles here, and you can go through them and understand. And last but not least, there's a town hall maintenance, $50,000. So why is the town hall require $50,000 to maintain? I think that in this case, it's a matter of putting in a new boiler, new water heater, as well as the heating system for the town hall, which has been there for a while, not operating efficiently right now. That's what this money is for. But you could ask the question, why 50,000? Why is it not 47,500? Or why is it not 60,000? All these are reasonable questions. Ask questions and understand so that you can be voting on an informed basis. That's part of being engaged in a civic manner, and and showing some activism. So when I add all those warrant articles that represent capital improvement, it adds up to about $1.8 million in the 2023 ballot. And to me, it will be about 50 cents per thousand evaluation, and will be $425.50 or so per year. So my question is it worth it for me to pay what little over $400 to maintain and upkeep this town? To me, it doesn't sound nearly that bad. Um, if you uh, complain, like, well, I've heard a lot of complaints of why are there so many warrant articles? When I go there to vote, and there's 30 articles, 40 articles, why do we have so many articles? I want you to tell you that we are actually doing not so bad right now. In 2023, which I show as an unfilled block because we have not voted for it yet, there are about 45 warrant articles, and that's what this yellow line is. And last year we had 48 or so warrant articles, and we were in a bad mood, so we did not vote for very many. So we only gave the town less than $1 million in capital improvements to do the job. On the other hand, we were totally in a jolly mood the year before that. There were much smaller number of warrant articles, only 37, but we voted for everything but 38 or so warrant articles. But I think that we voted for 37 out of 38 warrant articles, and we told the town to spend over $5 million in capital improvements. And that reflected in the big tax bill that we received in December of 2021 and in June 2022. So in 2020, there were something like 48 warrant articles. In 2019, 53 or so, and in 2018 there were 64 warrant articles. Okay, we are not anywhere near that bad right now. We have only 45 warrant articles, but I'll guarantee this to you. If you have not read the warrant articles ahead of time, it'll be difficult when you go to the polling place, pull the curtain behind you and stand there and try to read and understand and vote properly these warrant articles. It's a very difficult thing to do. So there is a proper way to treat the warrant articles. So my request to you is that read the warrant articles. Read them carefully ahead of the deliberative session. When I say read them carefully, you may ask, well, where do I get them from? Well, you go to the town site, and the town manager has kindly put on the town site the draft warrant articles. They are draft because they are going through the process of being approved by the attorneys for wording and by the Department of Revenue Administration. And once it goes through that gauntlet, it will become finalized. But you can be confident that what you are reading in terms of draft is almost what is going to be there in the final version. So what I'm asking is download them, read them ahead of the deliberative session. On the capital items, some of the warrant articles are not about capital items, they are about ordinances. On the warrant articles that pertain to capital items, understand the importance of the warrant article, the timing of it. Okay, it is very important, as I said earlier. Then some of the warrant articles have long-term implications. So you voted this year, and it's going to be there in the future. You need to understand that. One of the warrant articles is asking you to appropriate monies to hire 4 new firefighters to add to the fire department. Well, you could, you may feel that it is necessary and vote for it, but when you do that, you should understand that these 4 firefighters who are added to the roll are not going away next year. So they are going to be there year after year after year, and I showed you the total tax burden adding a firefighter is about $250,000. So 4 firefighters will reflect in terms of that pay benefits, including overtime, they may be around $1 million, and so that's going to be added to the tax base. In fact, you can go back to the numbers that I showed you earlier when I showed the tax bill. You can see if you add $1 million, how would that reflect in your tax numbers? So you can do all those calculations, and you need to think about whether you look at the services that you receive in terms of fire department, and you think about whether in your opinion, we need to add more firefighters and for the amount of money that it's going to cost you going forward. So this is an evaluation you need to do because this has an impact in its perpetuity. Ratifying contracts, I think there are two warrant articles that deal with um, bargaining agreements, which are union contracts, and the people need to sign off on them. If you vote them down, then the previous time and the existing contract will continue to take effect. But if you vote for the new ones, the terms of the new contracts will start taking effect. But once again, these bargaining agreements are multi-year. They are multi-year agreements. So once you vote for them, you have contractually obligated ourselves for a few years. So once we have told them that we are going to give them a certain amount of money in terms of salaries and benefits for the future years by signing off or ratifying their contracts now, we can't go back next year and say, no, I don't want to give it to you. That's not fair. So you need time to think about these things is now. So I would highly recommend that you call the town hall and get hold of the different contracts that are manifested as warrant articles and read through them and understand if you are in agreement with them or not. Once again, I'm talking about creating an informed electorate. The establishment of reserve funds. This is important because the reserve funds are sort of like savings accounts where you put some money away every year so that when the kitty bills, then something that requires a large sum of money can be purchased without giving a tax spike to the citizens of the town. So, but they have multi-year implication. So you need to be paying attention to the reserve funds that are manifested as warrant articles on the ballot. And finally, I would really ask you to have a default position on the warrant articles. To me, my approach is because I'm a fiscally conservative person, I say no to taxes unless I know there is a good reason to pay the taxes. And you need to have a default position. So what I do as a citizen is that I take a position that I'm not going to vote for it, but I investigate every one of them. And then I say, okay, I thought I shouldn't vote for it, but this sounds reasonable. The timing is good. The amount of money they are asking for is good. And the purpose they are asking for it is good. So I'm going to vote for it. So I will change my answers from no to yes on a case by case by case by case basis. But I don't sit there and not do the homework. If you say I'm not going to vote for anything and not do not do your homework, then that's not being a good citizen of the community. So you really need to have a default position, but you should be willing to do the homework. Now, you can make it easy on yourself in terms of the homework by just asking your friends who are doing the research and ask them how they are going to vote, and you may want to do it the same way. Or you can call me as a selectman and you can ask me for what is in the warrant article, what is that for, and I will talk you through that. Okay, I'll be happy to do that. You can definitely come to the deliberative session, get the answers to the questions so you are fully convinced and change your position from no to yes if no is your default position. Some people know people in one department more than other departments, and they may have a position that, hey, anything that comes from this department, my default position is yes, and for these departments it's going to be no, and unless I have additional information, I'm not going to change it. But whatever it is, you need to have a default position on the warrant articles, because when you go to the polling place, when you go to the rec center on March the 14th and pick up your ballot and go there, pull the curtain behind you, you are going to be looking at multiple pages. These 45 warrant articles are just for the town. You are going to have a ballot for the school and for the elementary and middle school, which are Seabrook schools, and you are going to have a ballot for the Winnacunnet school, and they're going to have warrant articles. So there is a lot for you to read and understand and vote on. So without previous, without having done some research and forming out an opinion and a default position, when you go into that polling place, it'll be very difficult to do a good job voting for the right things, as you wish. And if you do the research and vote the way you want, then you can then look at the outcome of the elections and you can relate to it. Otherwise, you vote, in a hurry or not without doing the research, you really won't be able to relate to the outcome. So my request to you is that please write down your vote for every one of the warrant articles ahead of time and bring it to the rec center and have it with you when you go in and pull the curtain behind you, open up your cheat sheet so you can vote, with that. Not just for the town ballot, but also for the school ballots. I want to talk to you about how the town budget is built. We talked about the taxes. We talked about the town spending. And I want to talk to you about how the town budget comes to be what it is as it is reflected in the ballot that you are presented to vote on. And I want to request you to pay particular attention to two terms that we are going to talk about here, the proposed budget and the default budget. Okay. The town budget, by and large, has two large portions, the contractual portion, the discretionary portion. The contractual portion are items that the town has by contract obligated to fulfill, like if the collective bargaining agreement that the Board of Selectmen struck with a certain union that was presented to you as warrant article last year that you voted on is in effect now. And that that bargaining agreement obligates us to honor certain terms, and they cost us money, and the money is appropriated to honor those terms are contractual. So we need to appropriate monies for it. Okay. Selected employees contracts run for multiple years, like the police chief, fire chief, the town manager. These are individuals with the contracts directly with the town, and these contracts run for multiple years. And the terms of those contracts need money to be appropriated to meet those terms. So that's part of the contractual. Some contracts with the third parties run for multiple years, like we may have a deal with, say, certain utility provider to provide electricity to the town infrastructure. And that's a multi-year contract, so we need to honor them, we need to appropriate monies for it. Or when we have a multi-year contract with a landfill someplace where our trash trucks go and dump the collected trash. That's multi-year contract. We need to appropriate monies for it for the upcoming year. So these are all good examples of contractual obligations. I'm not going to say this is exhaustive. There may be other items, but I'm kind of showing you what are the types of things that make up the contractual obligations, or you can say they are non-negotiable. You just have to meet them. Then there are those discretionary items. New contracts that are coming up for your vote, those are sort of discretionary, meaning new contract has been struck. I mean, new agreement has been struck between the Board of Selectmen and the unions or selected employees, but it is being presented to you as warrant article, and we are asking you to either approve or disapprove it. That is where you ratify the contract. And if you and this is the time for you to speak up about them, because if you vote for them, then they have multi-year implications, and you are obligating the town to honor the terms of those contracts from the future years, and that will reflect in the contractual portion of the town budget. They become non-negotiables for the duration of those contracts, but they are being presented to you right now to vote on. So you may say, well, I don't agree with these terms, I'm not going to vote for this particular contract. Or you may say, I will. For example, last year, the supervisory service employee contract was up for the voter approval, and the voters did not approve it. So that means the contract that was in place going into last year is now still in effect until a new contract is approved by the people, and that now appears as a warrant article. New employees, like I said, when you are adding employees to payroll, you are saying you are going to be adding to the tax base in perpetuity, and the decision is now as to whether you are going to agree to do that or not. This is a value judgment based on what you believe you are going to benefits you are going to get by giving the town more money to hire more employees. So take a look at those. Those fall into the discretionary. Addition of a newer addition to multi-year spending, that's another thing, or other nice things. Even if you're saying things like, we need to, paint the town hall to make it look nice for people, because it's, we have pride in having a nice looking town hall. Well, that costs money, and but you may say, well, that is discretionary. It looks good enough now. I don't paint my house every 5 years. Why do you have to do that? You could say that. But these are in the discretionary portion. Once again, I'm not saying this is a comprehensive list. There may be other things, but I'm just sharing with you some items that are in your discretion right now. So these are part of the discretionary portion of the total for the town budget. So the process of building the town budget goes something like this. Each town department, they come to us, come to the town manager with their list of additional spending they would like to have in the new year. And some of them are discretionary, some of them are contractual. So department by department, I believe that in late summer, the town manager starts collecting the information and putting them into this discretionary versus contractual buckets. Once he has this information collected from all the departments, he makes up this stack operating budget for the current year, and then all the contractual obligations turned in by the different department heads, and all the discretionary expenses that they have asked for. The town manager is the first filter, and he takes a look at the information the department heads turn in, and he says then, well, they can do without a few discretionary things, and he may knock them off. He may not have the ability to change what is in the contractual obligations, because nobody does, because we all have agreed to honor the contractual terms. And then he presents that to the Board of Selectmen. The Board of Selectmen then looks at the number and says, well, maybe, you were too harsh, taking away some money, I'll put some back in there. Or you are too lenient, I may take some money away from you even further. The Board of Selectmen has the ability to do that. And then they pass it on to the Budget Committee, and the Budget Committee in our town, which is an SB2 town, have the authority to modify the numbers even further. When all that is done, we have what is called a proposed budget. This is the budget for the upcoming year. That's built based on the operating budget for the current year, and all the contractual obligations that we have for the next year, and all the discretionary spending that's been approved all the way through the Budget Committee, and that makes up our proposed budget. Now, this is going to be presented to you as a warrant article, and I will share the warrant article with you on the ballot. Now, the question is, warrant articles basically ask you to vote for or against each of them, And if the proposed budget is presented to you and you are asked to vote for or against, and if majority of the people vote against it, what does that mean? Does the town have no money to operate at all next year? Is everything going to come to a screeching halt? What's going to happen? Well, that nothing comes to a screeching halt. To avoid the situation when people may not go along with the proposed budget, there is supposed to be what is called the default budget. And the default budget has to be minimally enough to operate the town with the amount of money that we are operating the town with for this year, plus the monies that are required to honor the terms of the contracts that we have in place for the next year. It makes complete sense, right? So that is supposed to be the default budget. So when you go into vote, you are supposed to have the choice between the proposed budget that has all of what the default budget has plus the discretionary, or say, no, 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 I want the town to operate within the minimum, which is the current year's budget plus the contractual obligations. In fact, there is one more piece to it. At the risk of complicating this, let me also mention this to you. If the operating budget for current year had any one-time spending, like for example, painting the water tank, which doesn't happen every year, that needs to be removed from this number when you calculate what is the minimum budget given to the town vis-a-vis the default budget. But anyway, for the time being, let's just know that, but not necessarily show it on the picture. So you have to choose. You are supposed to choose between giving the town all the money they are asking for, or give them the minimal amount of money to operate. People who believe everything that they are asking for is reasonable would tend to vote for the proposed budget. People who think that the town could operate more efficiently would tend to vote for the default budget. Well, these are the choices that you are supposed to have. If you vote for the proposed budget, default budget goes away. If you vote down the proposed budget, then the default budget takes effect. So the town has minimum amount of money to be able to continue to operate in the upcoming year. But the way that we do things in Seabrook is that we add into what we present to you as the default budget some of the discretionary expenses. And sometimes an argument is presented that some of these discretionary expenses are really contractual, but there's really no basis for it. But the bottom line is that the town of Seabrook has chosen to put in a good portion of the discretionary spending of the budget into the default budget. In fact, whereas the proposed budget is about 7% over the operating budget for the current year, the town default budget that is presented to you is only 0.6% smaller than the proposed budget. Follow that? So all but a very small sliver of the discretionary budget is taken out in the default budget that is presented to you. So when you go in to vote for in the ballot in March, you have to choose between the two. You don't have a choice. You are presented the default budget that the town presents on the ballot and the proposed budget. Now, if you vote for the proposed budget, it makes no difference what the default budget is. But if people vote for the default budget by voting down the proposed budget, what you are really doing is you are giving the town almost all of what they are requesting in terms of proposed budget, because the town provided default budget is only 0.6% smaller than the total proposed budget. Okay, which makes it interesting, because the choice that you have or you think is really no choice. It doesn't matter which one you vote for, because they differ by such a small amount that it doesn't make any difference which one you vote for. the town is going to have all the money that they believe they need to operate next year, including a good portion of the discretionary budget. So when you look at the numbers, the proposed budget for 2023 is $30,143,574, whereas the default budget, I have looked at the finance sheets, gone through it line by line, and separated them in terms of what is really contractual and what is not. And to me, this works out to be somewhere near $29 million, maybe a few dollars up or down, but it's around that, okay? But the default budget that the town presents to you, which includes a good portion of the discretionary budget, some of which they argue as contractual, is $29,951,709. And so you have to choose between these two numbers, not this number and this number, which differ by over $1.1 million, but between this and this, which only differ by less than $200,000. So this is what is on the ballot. Now, the warrant article for this on the ballot looks like this. This is article number 5. It is saying this is the proposed budget of $30,143,574. And it says, should this article be defeated, the default budget shall be $29,951,709. Okay? And it is right here. And they say this requires majority vote. Majority vote, of course, majority of the people in the town need to approve it. But folks, it really doesn't matter because these two numbers are so close to one another that you are basically voting to give the town all that they are asking for either way. And it is recommended by the Board of Selectmen. And there are 3 people on the Board of Selectmen, me being one of them. And majority vote prevails in the Board of Selectmen. And I, as a selectman, did not support this warrant article because I disagreed with the way that they have built this default budget. And I'll explain that to you a little bit further. It is also recommended by the Budget Committee. Once again, the Budget Committee has many members, and it doesn't say how many voted for it, how many voted against it, and who. That information is not available here as well. And it shows that if you vote for it, then this budget will mean 8.405 per thousand. You have to compare this to $6.13 that you saw in the tax bill that you received in 2022 December. So that 6.13 will go to 8.405. So you can see right away that it is going to impact your taxes, even if your property value does not change. Once again, town spending increasing, reflecting directly as increase in your tax bills. Now, there is a note section down here, okay? And this note only says this operating budget warrant article does not include appropriations contained in the warrant articles. Okay, that's the note. Now, in many warrant articles, there are note. The note is supposed to give you information that you can use to judge whether the presented warrant article is helpful or not. Like, it would have been useful to point out in this note what was the actual proposed or at least the operating budget for the current year. That way you would see the operating budget for the current year is in the $28 million range, whereas both the default and the proposed budget for the upcoming year are well over $1 million from it. Okay, but that is not in the note section. Why is it not there? It should be, right? And I will explain that to you as well. Now, when you read further, it says here that this default budget is such and such, which is the same as last year with certain adjustments required by previous actions of the town or by law. Now, this is a very legally sentence, which is legally correct. It says this number is the same as last year with certain adjustments required by previous actions of the town, which to me means adding the contractual obligations and removing any one-time expenses that we had last year. and that is the statute. But if you have not read this warrant article ahead of time, and if you go into the polling place, pull the curtain, and you read this, and you read this in a rush, because this is one of the 45 warrant articles just in the town ballot, and you are going to look at this and say, which is the same as the last year, and say, it's not bad. The town last year it operated with a 29,951, and this year it is 30,143. It has only gone up by a very little amount. This is fantastic. Today I'm in a mood to vote for the proposed budget. They are asking is only a small increase relative to last year's, so I'll vote for it. So that is how misleading this could be if you have not done the work ahead of time to read all these things carefully and understand. So the issue here is that the default budget on the ballot contains almost all of the proposed expenses. As a result, your ability to tell the town to operate at the same level as last year, albeit we have to oblige all the terms of the prevailing contracts, is removed. As a result, your ability to impose fiscal restraint on the town has been eliminated. It's really, really bad. So I fought for you when this happened, when the budget process happened. I opposed the inclusion of the discretionary expenses into the default budget. I did not buy the argument. Some were presenting that some of the discretionary expenses are really contractual, because the people who said that these are really contractual actually removed it from the budget in the first stage, but then later on put that back, and then they said it's part of the default budget. It's part of contractual obligation. So, if you call me, I can give you even more detail about the history. I was told that the Board of Selectmen has complete latitude to vote in anything they want into the default budget, and that's why the Board of Selectmen has the right to put in a good amount of the discretionary expenses into the default budget. I went and looked at the statute, which is which is all in the public domain information, and it's also in the municipality, a municipal association website. You can go look at it, and the statute did not say that. So I said I wanted a legal opinion on it, and as the town launched a legal opinion with the town attorney, I simultaneously also reached out to the New Hampshire Municipal Association attorney and asked for the legal opinion at the same time. And the legal opinion came back and it confirmed my assertion. The town attorney said, oh, what you have in the discretionary expense, that is the increased amount of money you're allocating for the increased cost of electricity and gas, should not be in the default budget. But he did not answer the question pertaining to the overtime expenses for the firemen, because there is $200,000 in overtime expense requested by the fire department, originally turned down by the town manager, subsequently added back by the Board of Selectmen, later on became part of the default budget and now being argued as it is a contractual obligation, and it isn't. So the town attorney did not explain that part of it in very clearly, but the attorney from the municipal association answered that question very directly, and he said you cannot put increases in the overtime expenses for the firemen into the default budget. I have all those documentations. Now, I shared all of that with the Board of Selectmen, but they simply overruled the legal opinion and included the discretionary expenses into the default budget. They told me that, hey, wait a second here, the attorneys are not running the town, we are running the town, and we decide what goes into the default budget. You can look at the video of the town Board of Selectmen meetings and you will see exactly what I'm talking about. So because so much of the default budget now contains the discretionary expenses, I kind of scratch my head and say, is this how the town's been doing in the previous years as well? So I went back and I looked at the numbers. Surprisingly, even in the previous years, the difference between the default budget and the proposed budget is very small. But the jump between the previous year's operating budget and the new numbers that were presented to us in the past are quite a bit more. So to me, it kind of looks like perhaps that this is how this has been the normal way that the budget's been going. This kind of explains to me to some extent why every year, when even in those years when people voted down the proposed budget and went with the default budget, our property taxes increased anyway. So this kind of answers one of the questions that I always had. Why does my property taxes go up every year, even in years when we vote down the proposed budget? So, and that's because the default budget is not what we think it is. So I didn't give up. So I told them, okay, if you are not going to um, uh, take out the discretionary expenses from the default budget, at least add a note section that says that explains what the operating budget or the proposed and the default budget for the current year are, so that when people look at the proposed number and the default number on the ballot, they have something to compare that to, and they themselves will be able to see that neither the proposed budget nor the default budget is anywhere close to the default or proposed budget of last year. Well, the Board of Selectmen said, no, we are not going to do that. We are not going to put that in the note. So what has it done? It has removed the people's ability to evaluate accurately the information on the ballot. So unless you are a regular follower of the Board of Selectmen meeting, or unless you analyze the budget process and the budget numbers presented to you, you are not going to know this. Okay, so I have to tell you, I'm an educated man, and I think that I considered myself as being pretty involved in the process. But I will tell you, I did not understand this until I became a selectman myself. Okay, and I'm sharing this with you because I wish somebody had explained this to me when I was not a selectman, and I would have done some things differently. But it's too late for me, but it doesn't have to be too late for you. So you could do something about it. So I'm sharing this information with you. Because people's ability to choose between the correct default budget and the proposed budget should not be compromised, in my humble opinion. Anyway, I've been then saying, okay, if the town budget is constructed this way, is the school committee doing the same thing with the school default budget? If that is the case, we could be dinged 3 times, because there are going to be 3 ballots that we are going to face: the town budget, the school budget, meaning elementary and middle school budget, and the Winnacunnet school ballot. And if all of them are doing the default budget this way, then no wonder we are unknowingly authorizing additional spending, thinking that we are not, but we are, because of the way the information is presented to us on the ballot. I kind of feel that as extremely misleading. I don't know about you, but I feel it is misleading. That is the reason why I voted against it. So, we need to investigate by doing a deep dive into the school budget to really know the answer to the question as to if the school budget committee is doing similar thing. I don't know the answer right now, but when I look at the school warrant, though, the difference between the school proposed budget and the default budget is even smaller than the difference between the proposed and the default budgets of the town. So I need to probably put more time and look into the school budget. I was on the Winnacunnet School Budget Committee last year, and believe me, I didn't pick up on this when I was on the budget committee. So I'm trying to tell you that it is not something that is very obvious to anybody unless you are going through the process. If the town were to be setting the correct default budget, and if the people were to be choosing the default budget year after year instead of the proposed budget, then the town budget would have been growing at about 2.6% cumulative annual growth rate. But because the default budget is done differently in this town, and sometimes people vote for default budget, sometimes they vote for proposed budget, the actual budget spending has been following a trend line of 3.89% cumulative annual growth rate. So the town budget is growing at a much faster rate than it should. So anybody who is looking for fiscal restraint would want to pull this curve down onto this. And that has to start by doing our default budgets correctly. Okay, believe me, the 2.6% growth is reasonable, and that represents growth in that is necessary to maintain our infrastructure and pay for increased salaries year after year for our employees to keep them competitive against their compatriots in the private industry. We need to do all of that, but the 2.6% should be able to take care of it. But we are paying a lot more than we should, in my humble opinion. There are other reasons the budget is growing. One of them, I talked about it earlier. There is a warrant article asking for 4 new firefighters to be added to the payroll. I told you that it is going to add to the permanent tax base going forward because it's full-time employment. That is not one time. Once it is added, it will remain forever. And because the elections are in March, if these 4 new firefighters were added this year, you will only have to pay this increased amount for 9 months of the year, and that will cost the town, according to this warrant article 532-216, this is assuming that they don't get any overtime pay. But believe me, they are going to get overtime pay, I believe, and they are saying that in the future years, it will cost $617,292, but there will be overtime payments on top of that, as I will explain to you in a minute. So when you looked at the cost of the taxpayer burden of the different job functions, I explained to you earlier, a fireman is about $250,000, and so including overtime, 4 firefighters would mean about $1 million. All after all is said and done, and you need to understand that I'm not going to say don't vote for this. I'm going to say take a look at the services you are receiving right now and decide whether you want to take on an additional tax burden of $1 million going forward. It is your value call. Okay. Now, in this particular warrant article, this warrant article has been brought up 4 out of the past 6 years, got watered down every year. Every time it came up, and adding 4 new firefighters will not reduce the overtime spending, because I asked this question in the Board of Selectmen meeting. It's on video, and you can also get the meeting minutes from the town hall for the Board of Selectmen meeting for November the 21st when I asked this question, and the fire chief was very clear. He said that it will not reduce the overtime spending. So this $1 million or so spending increase is on top of the $6.5 million they currently are asking for. So expect the number to be $7.5 million next year if this warrant article were to be approved. I said it is important for people to see when they vote, it is important for them to see on the ballot what the fire chief said, and that is these 4 new firefighters, when added, will not reduce the overtime expense. It's important because if people vote for 4 new firefighters, I wouldn't blame them if they took that to mean that the overtime numbers are going to come down in the future years because there are more full-time firefighters. When they find out next year that the overtime numbers have not come down, they will not be disappointed. They will be upset. They say, well, what happened? Well, I didn't want to create false expectations and false hopes and disappointments down the road. So well, that's one of the reasons why I said we should put in a note statement under this warrant article and say this will not reduce the overtime. But the Board of Selectmen, they looked at me and they said, if you do that, people will not vote for this warrant article, and you are trying to defund the police by asking this note to be added. Believe me, folks, I'm not taking any money away from the fire department. I'm only putting in information that will not and that will help us from creating false hope and disappointment later on. But the Board of Selectmen voted it down on a 2-to-1 vote. I voted for inclusion of this note as a proviso for the motion to adding this as a warrant article, and I was voted down. Okay. It's important for you to know how these things operate, even if you don't watch the Board of Selectmen meetings week after week. I'm basically giving you some excerpts from some of the things that I have seen. There is another warrant article. This has to do with collective bargaining, and this is an interesting thing that I want you to pay attention to. It talks about zero impact on the first year, but not zero impact on the subsequent years. So pay attention to those types of warrant articles as well. Summary is that the total taxes in the town has been going up. On aggregate, property taxes are going up. I say on aggregate because, as I told you, there are different property classes in the town. Some years, depending upon the economic situation, one property class may end up bearing a lion's share of the taxes and may see a higher increase in the taxes than the other. So I don't want to say that you will never see your tax remaining stable or perhaps even go down like it did this time. Take an example. This particular tax bill that you received in December, to many people, the taxes actually went down a little bit because the tax rate came down from 3.73 last year to 13.73 last year to 13.25 this year. And the reason it went down is because, okay, I would like to be able to say that I made that happen because I promised when I ran for Board of Selectmen that I would control the steep increase in the property taxes. But in all honesty, I can't take the credit for it. What really happened was that because of the inflation and because of the increase in the electricity and natural gas prices, the nuclear power plant in the town has been assessed a much higher property value, and as a result, their taxes jumped by over $3 million, okay, or approximately $3 million. Because now that property class has stepped up to pay a higher portion of the town taxes, the residential and the commercials in this town are getting a tax benefit that is reflected as a reduction in the taxes. So the property classes can vary, but the town budget, make no mistake, is going up year over year. So ultimately, if you want to control your property taxes, you need to control the town budget. Okay, so on aggregate, our property taxes have been going up. People will tell you, oh, our tax rate is going down, so everything is great. Pay no attention to the tax rate because the tax rate is only one of the two multipliers that you need to worry about. Your real number you need to worry about is your actual property tax dollars, because that number is equal to the product of your tax rate and your valuation. Many times your valuation may go up and the tax rate may go down a little bit, and you may end up still paying higher tax dollar amount. So when people, revel in the tax rate numbers, ignore it. Pay no attention to it. It is as simple-minded as people telling you your taxes went up because your assessed value went up, which is talking about once again 1/2 of the formula. The formula is your valuation times the tax rate equal to your tax in dollars, which is your share of the town total budget. So you need to really keep that in mind and get away from the simple-minded discussions. And the default budget that is presented to us on the ballot to vote on is really not what we think it is. It's a sad truth. That is the way it is in the 2023 election. So when we go in there, when we vote on, even if it is for the default budget, it isn't exactly what we think it is. The town is going to still raise almost all the money they are looking for, including a good portion of the discretionary number. If you want to control your future, you need to become more knowledgeable about these processes and about these warrant articles and how your monies are collected and spent, and you need to get involved. Okay, by involvement I mean be there during the Board of Selectmen meetings, ask questions when the decisions are made, not after they are made, and recruit candidates and do things, be involved and elect those who would do this work for you. If you don't have the time to do that, then elect the people who will do this for you. How can you tell somebody will do this for you? Before you elect somebody, talk to them. Talk to them if they are going to be watchdogs of your tax dollars. And that is not at the expense of the town services. The town services we all love, we still want them, but we want efficiency of operation across the board so that our tax dollars will deliver the best value for us. And you need to elect people who will look out for that. My call to action to you is that obtain advanced copies of the warrant articles that are available right now in draft form to be downloaded from the town website. Do your research on each one of them and decide how you are going to vote on every one of them, and make this decision before the deliberative session, or at least form a default position on these warrant articles and prepare your questions when you come to the deliberative sessions so you can ask these questions to the department heads. By the way, there's really no reason for you to even wait until the deliberative session to get your answers. You could reach out to the town manager, or you can reach out to the superintendent of the different departments and about the warrant articles that that are there on the ballot, and you can ask them these questions before the deliberative session. Okay, there's nothing wrong with it. So in some form or another, please get all the answers. Recruit candidates and register them between January 25th and February 3rd. And here I'm not talking about just for the town positions, but also for the school committee. Remember that the school committee deals with the dollars much bigger than the town. So it is important that we send good fiscally conservative people for the school committee. Okay. So we need to recruit and have them register in the appropriate window of January 25th to February 3rd. Host candidate debates if you are running any group, a senior group or a Lions Club or ladies association or something. Hey, you have a ability to get a forum, and you can invite the candidates to come in and speak and have a debate before the elections. You have the ability to do that, so please do that. The candidates will be happy to do that because they want to reach the voters. Participate in the deliberative session, and have your taxpayer friends participate in the deliberative session, as I harped on several times before, and bring up motions at the deliberative sessions to change the course. See, the people in this town are the legislative body. The Board of Selectmen is just the executive body. You have the power of the purse. So you have the ability to bring up motions at the deliberative session, but you need to do that in a legal way. So if you are planning to bring any motions to change the budget allocation for the town or anything like that at the deliberative session, make sure that you have run by some attorney so that what you are doing is completely legal, and but bring it up, and people will be asked to vote on them, and if your vote passes, whatever that your motion is about might carry. So understand that you have the ability to do. All you need to do is to organize. Community organization is very important. That's what I mean by citizen activism. So here are some important dates. Candidate registration opens on the 25th. Candidate registration closes on February the 3rd. The school budget deliberative session is on the 6th of February, the day before the town budget deliberative session, which is on the 7th. And the town elections are going to be on the 14th of March. there'll be heavy campaigning going on from February 3rd through 14th of March by all those candidates who are running for different town offices. If you have supporting a candidate, help them, support them, and in any way you can. And that's part of being active. So my request to you is that educate yourself, and participate in this very democratic process, and by doing that, make your own future. Okay, so that is my parting remark and request to you. Thanks a lot for your time for watching this. If you have any comments, please put it in the comment section. I'm going to put it on YouTube. And if you have any questions, depending upon your questions, ask the town hall or the department head or the selectman of your choice, including myself. It is best to do the research. If you are part of a friend group, get together and look at the warrant articles together as a group. That way you can kind of discuss among yourselves. And when one gets the answer, you all get the answers. Okay. So see if you can do something like that. That'll be very helpful. So thanks a lot for your time, and pass this link along to your friends so that more people get to see how the budget is built and what they are going to face in the upcoming election, and be encouraged to participate in the democratic process by participating in the deliberative session and the voting process and so forth. Thank you. Bye-bye.